Sun. Now, bottom page, again, you also want to find that center page 2017 budget. National Assembly has no right to introduce new projects, acting president. And that's on page 8 of the Daily Sun newspaper. And president shouldn't appoint INEC chair, Jega, and that's on page 10 as well. Ali, which one do you, sorry, I beg your pardon, Ima, which one do you actually look at this and take a kick out of?
Yeah, I think the big story of the day, which is the acting president
blowing hot.
Yeah, blowing hot. And if you watch him yesterday, you know that he was really pained by all that is happening. Yes, we need some form of we need a presidential presence now, especially with the agitations. And I think Osibanjo is actually feeling the gap and trying to sound tough and talk tough. We need that kind of leadership now.
All right, let's look at the front page of the Independent newspaper. Of course, almost all the dailies we have this one is running through that story as its major headline. But the Independent is also reporting 30 trillion naira forex probe. Senate gives CBN 7 days to recover 536 billion naira revenue. Of course, that follows investigation by the Senate Committee on Customs and Excise. You find the story on the front page there, and it continues on page A4 of the Daily Independent. What else do we have here? Nigerian Newspaper Proprietors Association of Nigeria decries EFCC invasion of the Sun's office. That's on page A10 of the paper. Nigeria loses $2.5 billion annually to low cocoa production processing. There's another one there. It's a front page story. A4 is where you read more on the details of that. Emma, what do you think of these?
Well, there are great stories there. I don't know if you looked at the lead story. The lead story is interesting too, of the Independent.
Yeah, because it's almost similar to what we had. And I think the context has to do with what the meeting the acting president had with the northern leaders.
Yeah, but it's a serious issue, and I think almost every paper is running with it because, I mean, it's the biggest story coming from last week and actually spilling into this week. If last week was the conflict itself, this week looks like the resolution of some of the conflict with the various sides weighing on the matter and trying to get a closure to it. It's interesting to see that suddenly we're realizing that, look, well, splitting and going away is not the best way to go. Suddenly, I think both sides are beginning to see that, and with the acting president weighing in, it seems to be some closure and some clarity coming into the matter, and I think that's why papers are leading with it. But every other story there on the Independent strikes a chord, and I think readers will go for these stories too.
And the story on the EFCC's invasion of the Sun's office and the reaction from the PAN.
It's getting a lot of condemnation from various, of course, practitioners and colleagues who always condemn such invasion, and it's curious because I think it's a story that for us in the media we're going to stay with in the week and find out all that's why the invasion. You think that's the end of some of those kind of crisis surrounding media houses, but then you have this happening to the Sun newspaper, and I'm sure we're going to stay with the story and get to the bottom of it.
Another one you find on the front page of the Independent is one disturbing picture, actually. Members of FCT natives, marginalized youths, that's how they call themselves, protesting alleged marginalization in federal appointment at the National Assembly. There you find them almost naked. And the headline there with it, FCT indigents threaten quit notice. Okay, another quit notice. There you go. FCT indigents this time threaten quit notice on all of us residents. I hope you're prepared for that.
Move your things and go back.
And it's interesting that actually they have to do that naked. And now you're beginning to wonder whether this are the kind of people. Well, of course, they have a case there. The agitation has been on since the creation of the FCT, that they will want to play more roles in the FCT, especially asking that if not anything, they should be allowed to run the FCT as FCT ministers, or at least get a chunk of whatever is coming out of the FCT. The history is there. They actually own, they are the owners of the land, but of course, again, it's federalism, and nobody can lay claims now and say look, this is our land, every other person. In any case, the cause of people leaving, giving people eviction notices from everywhere has been condemned or run. But I think they have a case there that, look, want to play, greater roles in a place that's, in the land of our birth and all that. But coming out naked is another issue altogether.
I mean, other clients have done it in a way headfirst on that. But let's look at the authority here. The authority is looking at Disco's meter manufacturers differ on no meter, no pay directive, and that's on page 5. And we also see family of missing lieutenant demands justice from army, and that's on page 4. But bottom page story, Anambra 2017, rumpus in APC over Ngige's Guba bid, and that's on page 4 of the authority. And of course, more groups join calls for Ifeanyi Uba's release, which is what you will keep finding on the front page of the authority. But let's look at the stories there. First, you find one from Discos, and then the political story on Anambra, and then the family of the missing lieutenant. How do you look at that?
The missing lieutenant story is quite painful, and reading it, you begin to wonder if there's such, kidnapping is on the rise. It's a good thing that yesterday, security chief met with the House of Representatives to discuss this in details and, find some solution to this. You never know how painful this is unless if you're really involved. Imagine a father traveling all the way to Lagos and saying, look, I can't find my son, and it's a soldier. So you can imagine what others are going through who don't have this kind of opportunity. But there is a story on Disco, and it's very interesting. Let me announce to you people that I've had light now for close to 7 to 8 days in my.
They heard your cries.
Exactly. So I think some certain things, I don't know whether it's for me, but it's like things are improving. I saw the minister. Well, maybe it's improving my place, so it's probably improving as well. But I saw the minister trying to do something. And one time on this one program, I thought whether we've surrendered to the forces of darkness. But from all indication, something has been done about it. And of course, the Ifeanyi Uba story, the front page of the authority, like Adora had noted, it's almost a natural story for them. Most other papers or other medium are no longer following the story as we do. We've moved on to other things. But the authority has stayed with the Ifeanyi Uba story and said that, look, there must be some justice in the matter.
All right, let's look at the Nigerian pilots. The Nigerian pilots is dared to be different as far as its main headline is concerned. The headline says $1.1 billion Malibu oil deal. FG moves to extradite ex-AGF Adoke others. Court fixes October 26 for trial. That's the lead headline on the front page of that paper. And Reps insists on immortalization of late MKO Abiola. That's on page 5 of the paper. Nigeria generates 204.77 billion naira from VAT, that's VAT, in first quarter coming from the NBS. Okay, what else do we have here? Vaccine shortage, Nigeria prone to deadly meningitis outbreak. And U.S. court has no jurisdiction to try Burutai. This is coming from a group. You can read that on page 5. And what I find quite beautiful on the front page of this paper, apart from the text of the headlines, is just that picture there.
Yeah, the World Albinism Day.
Beautiful, beautiful kids. I mean, cross-section of children with albinism during the 2017 International Albinism Awareness Day held in Abuja yesterday. Emma, what do you make of the front page here?
Yeah, the picture too is catchy. Yes, I think it's going to draw attention to the plight of albinos, especially here. I think what they suffer here mostly is neglect, but elsewhere in the world, I mean, especially on the continent, they actually suffer real attack, and it's a good thing that they are talking and, saying that, look, we exist, also need a piece of the action. And of course, the lead story, it's another intriguing story, almost like a thriller, like the Malibu oil deal, and then the issue of extradition. That's a good story too. I think Pilot has it locked down together.
All right, People's Daily is next. What we see here is, first of all, we will see the hate speeches come across all the papers this morning on acting president reading the Riot Act to troublemakers. We will see that. But focusing on other stories, we see June 12, Reps want posthumous GCFR for Abiola, and that's on page 4. You also want to look at DHQ raises panel to probe Navy police clash in Calabar, and that's on page 2 as well. Now, Senate gives CBN 7 days to recover 30 trillion naira customs fund, and that is on page 3 of the People's Daily. However, what we want to see bottom page is one of legislative aides ambush Saraki protest non-payment of salaries, and that's on page 6 of People's Daily. I mean, we talked about earlier on in the show where one of the aides passed on due to lack of funds to go through a surgery. And then you also find Senate accuses AGF of laxity in anti-graft war, and that is on page 5. Now, I mean, which one are you looking at? I mean, lots of stories from People's Daily.
Well, they led with the big story, like I said, from last week to this week. Last week was the crisis proper. This week looks like issues of resolutions and the presidency, weighing in on the matter, which is very important. That we have, the presidential, the presidency weighing on the matter, and of course all leaders of thought. But then that's sad story there of legislative aides asking for their pay, and it's a bit disheartening. I think part of the problem is that they really don't do, most of them, I think, were just taken in by some of these legislators. They even actually see it as part of their constituency project to actually just employ them without any defined sort of assignment. So in most cases, they think that, they really don't need them. And they feel they're just doing them a favor. But the truth of the matter is that having employed them, you are duty bound to pay them. So, and then, of course, you have many of them in the past. We've had some of them actually die right on the footsteps of the National Assembly. And this is a place where you have legislators who clearly everybody thinks or knows that they live very outrageous lifestyle. They've got all sorts of, perks and, allowances to walk away with. So I don't know why it's so difficult to actually even pay the people that you work with. So it's a sad thing. I think all this is a clarion call that on top of all the crises that our legislators have to deal with, they just celebrated their 2 years in office. They should also consider that, look, it's the peanuts, that they pay their legislative aides. It's nothing. We don't. This shouldn't be one of the dramas. Please, they should just address it.
What I heard from the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives was that he blamed it on the management of the National Assembly, the National Assembly management itself, essentially saying bureaucracy is the cause why some of these monies are being held up.
Yeah, but bureaucracy is not a cause when they have to sign their extra quotes and allowances. I mean, they should do something about this.
All right, let's look at the front page of the New Telegraph. This story is one very serious story that we seem to have been overlooking. That's talking about the Senate investigation of revenues collected by customs, which are being held by certain banks for so many months, in fact, getting to years. The money is huge. CBN gets marching order to recover 536 billion naira from banks. Senate kicks over unremitted revenue. It's a front page story on the New Telegraph, and it continues on page 5. It's a story you want to read because a lot of people will say the Senate are not doing well. The Senate helping the federal government to get in more cash and shore up its capital base as much as possible. Another one is Amechi. Buhari has done more for Igbo than Jonathan. This is coming from Minister of Transportation, Rotimi Amechi. Another one here says, 2019, APC can be sacked, says Oyegun. Well, this is coming from the national chairman of the APC, says his party can be sacked. You may want to read on that on page 3 of the paper. Another story which has been trending online actually is the maybe a soft side of the news. Lakija's son, that's the richest woman, the wealthiest African woman, Fulurinshaw Lakija's son's wedding, says spends 2 billion naira on wedding. The story is actually called from the Daily Mail of London, and this New Telegraph brings it to you on the front page. What do you make of some of these headlines? Were you fascinated about this one?
No, I wasn't fascinated. I was actually disgusted. I mean, that's the truth. Maybe I'm a little bit jealous too. I don't know. But you have a situation where you are spending 2 billion on a wedding. I just had a wedding too myself. Where I gave out my younger sister in wedding. And I'm just imagining what 2 billion would do. 2 billion is actually like half the amount that some states, get to run everything, to pay salaries and all that. And then you have it here. If it is true, this is really disheartening. You are probably the richest woman in Africa, but that wealth does not translate into anything if all you do is to go spend that kind of money your son's
wedding.
wedding.
Wedding comes only once in a lifetime.
Yeah, well, even at that, you have other things that are important. But I'm just hoping that this story is not true, and I'm hoping that the amount is not true.
Is a woman's money.
What if it's from both families? You never know. It might just
Wherever it's coming from, it's outrageous to spend this kind of money. And I think Daily Mail is running this story to show how terrible how Africans, given all the poverty they leave behind, come to this parts of the world and spend this kind of money. I think they're just raising an alarm and blowing the whistle and saying, look at the kind of opulence, look at the kind of waste, look at the kind of ostentatious lifestyle that these people live when back home they live in abject poverty. I think that's the moral of that story.
Well, it's a wedding for them to experience. Well, the same. Congratulations to the lucky Jess. Okay, let's get to Blueprint this morning. And still running by that lead story, we're still looking at the one from the acting president. But most importantly, we see one just directly underneath the nameplate. APC will exist for 200 years. Presidency. We want to make PDP mistakes, so yeah, go. And that's coming on page 6 of Blueprint. And I saw, a captain earlier on at the back page saying, well, make the demands meet the demands first, and we'll let you reign. You know how they do these things in newspaper. But $50 billion aids enter Africa annually, German lawmaker. And that's on page 5 of the Blueprint. You also want to look at 70% Kaduna women gives birth at home. Commissioner, and that's on page 5 of the Blueprint newspaper. Castina screens 3,000 applicants for teachers. Hajj fair, Senate 6, 200 naira to $1 exchange rate, and that is on page 16 of Blueprint. But bottom page, we're looking at the Malibu scam there. Federal government to extradite Adoke, others, over $1.1 billion Malibu scam. That comes to you on page 13. Now, Ima, what are you going to take away from this story? I mean, the lead story is still the same across the board, but, interesting enough, you find different ones.
Yes, and when you said APC said it was going to be there for 200 years, I think everybody chuckled and we all smiled. But you see, that also contradicts the position of the chairman of the party, who said that, look, APC could be sacked. I think that's he is trying to temper that sort of optimism, And PDP also had that kind of say those kind of thing in the past, where it said that, look, we're going to be here for 60 years, and I think more. 60 years was actually the benchmark, but APC is taking that a little bit higher, saying that it's going to be there for 200 years. It's good for a party to be, to reassure its base and to say, look, we're going to be here for as long as possible. But then we learn from history, and we know that nothing lasts. The PDP was also cocksure that it was going to remain relevant. And, at the time, they thought they were too big to fail. But then, of course, the bust happened, and you have PDP crashing. So I think APC, saying that it will not repeat the mistake of the PDP is heartwarming. What are those mistakes? They are very clear. One of the mistakes is, rhetoric like this, that, look, we are too big to fail. Nothing will happen to us. We don't care what you think. We're going to be here for 200 years. Nobody says that kind of a thing. In the civilized world, people allow, the electorate to determine whether they are going to last or they are going to stay there. You don't come out and beat your chest and say, oh, you are going to be there 200. It sounds as if you like it, you don't like it, we're going to be there. And talking about not repeating the mistake of the PDP, this is just one of the errors of that party. The whole thing about too sure of the fact that, look, we will not fail, we can't fail. In fact, to some extent, some people will say that, well, whether you like it or not, we're going to stay here as long as we want to. But I think experience and history have taught us that power actually belongs to the people. They determine whether you're going to even last a year or not. So I think there should be some humility among the political class to understand that it is really possible to fail.
All right, let's look at some sports stories. Blueprint back page tells you Ronaldo accused of tax evasion in Spain. So yeah, I'm sure you follow that story as well. And it's not the first time; it's also coming to the news as well. And you also want to be asking. People are asking, what happened to Nigeria in that match? How come they were beaten amongst all the telecom stories? But People's Daily is also looking at Juventus open talks for Costa as Bayern tag 45 million euros, and Costa has many offers, and that's coming from Chelsea. Bottom page story, back page, People's Daily newspaper. Uti, do you have any sports story?
Yes, the leadership is up next, and the leadership front page has some interesting headlines you might want to see. The bottom headline on the front page: Nigeria, other African countries need $4.3 billion to bridge energy gap. That's on page 26. But if you flip towards the back page, you see the sports headlines there, and some of them. You know that Sports Federation have been holding their elections. The elections held yesterday at the National Stadium here in Abuja, and the leadership sports is reporting shock, upset as Nimrod Gusau, Dinga, Ocheho, others win. You might want to read who are the new leaders of the sporting federations of Nigeria, various sporting federations in the country. Find out more as we continue to count down to preparations for international meets and also continental meets as well. Emmanuel Bello, thank you so much for being here with us on Newspaper Review. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. Always a pleasure. Well, don't go anywhere. We might also just be coming back to you with some reviews from the online, especially at AIT Kakaaki. People have been tweeting, and a lot of responses are coming in. So let's take a quick break, and then we'll be right back at you.
New spirit of Africa. This is Kakaaki, the African voice. Africa, you see. Africa, you know. Africa, you understand. Africa, you celebrate. On Kakaaki, the African voice.
Human rights, equality, fairness, the rule of law, principles that shape a democratic society. Who sets the moral bar? Who controls the wheel of justice? Who protects the weak and the strong? Who defines the legal framework and ensures its just enforcement? Citizens' constitutional rights, liberties, and basic freedoms. AIT's Legal and Human Rights Program, Project Justice returns. Project Justice, 5:30, every Wednesday on Africa Independent Television.
They see chaos and conflicts. We see community action for good governance. They see poverty and want. We see perseverance and the will to go on. They see economic law. We see the ingenuity and creative spirit of our people. We are AIT News, fresh, authentic views of Africa. How would you rather see the world? AIT News, all sides, all the time. The new spirit of Africa. This is Kakaaki, the African voice.